Hello and welcome to my PechaKucha Club. Today we have an interesting guest, Vera from the Nieuwenhof. We would like to talk and to discuss her interesting story about the Chinese tea culture, about her travel in China and many interesting topics that brought her here. So I would give a word to you to tell your story, like who you are and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I just came back to the Netherlands for the first time in 2 years, and I was very happy to discover this little part of China in Amsterdam. In 2016, I traveled by bicycle from Amsterdam to Japan, and on the way I came through Yunnan. And I visited Yunnan province before in 2000. I wanted to stay, I wanted to spend some time there. I have always been interested in Chinese culture. When I was 10 years old, I taught myself how to eat with chopsticks and trying calligraphy. So I decided to, instead of going back to the Netherlands at the end of the bicycle journey, I wanted to spend some time there. Mm-hmm. So my plan was to live there for 1 year and then cycle back. But then I found an interesting job for a marketing and media company. So I was organizing events, I was writing articles, I was traveling a lot around the province, also by bicycle. And so I ended up staying for almost 5 years.
In Yunnan, right?
Yeah, all in Yunnan. First in Kunming. Mm-hmm. But the last year and a half I went freelance and I moved to a very small village outside Dali Old Town. Mm-hmm. And I renovated a traditional courtyard home and I lived there. And I was organizing cultural events for the Dutch consulate.
PechaKucha night, people share inspiring and creative 7-minute presentations at venues all around the world.
Dali really now understands what PechaKucha is. Like, there was a big turnout tonight. There are so many creatives here from all over China.
So there's people that have traveled all over the world, that have been educated in all kinds of different places and choose to live here.
I love the setting, I love the atmosphere. I don't know a lot about architecture, so I feel I'm learning a lot about it.
Learning more about their background and how they got into this is really interesting.
很有效，跟每个人讲的很不一样，但是又不会觉得很啰嗦啊。
这些建筑大师，他们对于环保这个议题，还有碳的持续性使用，以及中国这个房屋持续性发展，他们有一些新的想法，挺顺其自然的。
他讲那些木头啊、肌理，跟新和旧的一个对话。
Mini wooden houses all over Europe. They're still there and being used by public. That's really cool.
Yang Xiong, who's a very important local designer. He's a Tibetan from Lugu Lake, and he's not just an architect, but also a designer of spaces where people can come together and share culture. For instance, the Elephant Bookstore in Kunming.
In a way, architects are utopian, like they are designing for a better society. What we build says a lot about how we feel about our society.
We have to make sure that in a few decades we have to work together to make this world sustainable. We have to live together as nations, as different people. It's about really a globalization, and I think that's the message. And we can do it.
So yeah, that's in a nutshell been my life in Yunnan.
Mm-hmm. And what brought you to the idea to go by bike from the Netherlands straight to Japan, right? Like it's all the way like you went by bicycle.
Yeah, apart from a flight between Thailand and the south of Japan. I have always been working in the cultural sector in the Netherlands, mm-hmm. and I studied architectural history. And at that time, me and my then partner, we had been working really hard. We were a little bit overworked, and maybe we had a small midlife crisis. We were like, wow, we're still young enough and our parents are still healthy. Let's do this. We had been hosting long distance cyclists. There is an online platform, and these people would come to our house and roll out a map of Tajikistan, and we're like, oh, we also want this. so we just went.
Okay, and about so the trip, you went straight away like from Netherlands with like stops in different countries, or and then you went through Yunnan to Japan, and then on the way back you decided to come back to Yunnan.
Yes, I wanted to be there for 1 year to dive into the language and the culture, especially Yunnan because of the diversity and landscapes and people. Because usually when I told people where I lived, I would say Yunnan and not China, because China, a lot of people think the big cities on the east coast or Beijing. But I was like, no, Yunnan, that's the place where I want to live. And then I lived in Kunming because that's where work is. But yeah, I traveled a lot. Had a lot of interesting encounters also in the tea regions. I traveled to Xishuangbanna and that whole area. Yeah, very quickly I started meeting people who were really interested in tea, like foreigners and Chinese, and going to the tea markets and drinking tea. And I never liked coffee so much, and that's difficult in the Netherlands because everywhere you go, like having some coffee is part of the gezellige culture, right?
It's like lifestyle. Yeah.
Yes.
Netherlands in the coffee culture, in coffee country.
Yeah. So I was so happy to move to Yunnan, and like, everything is centered around tea. And I started finding different teachers. I studied with Mabel from Discover Cha for 1 semester. I had a teacher in my village in Dali who was more focused on just practicing the Kung Fu Cha. The best moment was I recently decided I wanted or needed to move back to Europe to be closer to my family. And I was thinking like, how do I maintain my connection with Yunnan? How do I stay close? I do tea ceremony every morning for myself, and one morning I was looking at the leaves in the gaiwan, and I saw a whole universe opening. I saw the ladies picking leaves. I saw the books that had been written. I saw the trade routes, like the Tea Horse Road, and I was like, this is it. Like all of Chinese culture connects through tea, and it's a beautiful practice. And I like bringing people together. I've always been doing events, but this is smaller. But it's a way to have really good conversations.
Yes,
so
like it's also. Tell me about like when you start your day with tea as a ritual, right? It's like drinking in a slow, mindful way. Would it give it to you? You know, like because what would be your experience like when you start the day in that way? Like
I think it's very grounding. Because for years I have been very busy, very extroverted, like I'm organizing events, I'm bringing people together, I'm on stage talking, I'm having business meetings. And especially when I moved to Dali, to a small village, I went way more inside. And then when you start the day with tea, you quickly discover like, oh, what is going on inside, or what is bothering me, or what do I need? Like, do I need to slow down? Do I need to fix something? Is there a problem that I need to deal with? And that practice has made me. I was already a pretty happy person, but the tea practice definitely, made me more grounded, less rushed, less swept along by everyday life. And especially in times of a pandemic, when everyone is stressed and worried about friends and family, it's like you sit down, you think, you call a friend if that's what's needed, but whatever you need comes up just through sitting and.
It's kind of connecting with yourself, right? Like a moment for yourself. Like what I also hear quite often, like time for yourself, you know, love for yourself. It can be also like just as simple as it is, you know, just to put the tea for yourself, to set up the tea for yourself, you know, just spend maybe 15-20 minutes like in a slow way drinking. It already brings a lot, right?
Yeah.
So What do you think, like how tea helps in a daily life, you know, like in China, like when you compare people who are drinking tea, like for them I think it's quite normal, right? It's part of their life, you know. So can you compare maybe the European style of approach of tea drinking and the traditional, or I don't know, like it's Chinese way or it's more Eastern way, like, you know, like the attitude to tea. So because you already have kind of two views, you know, you've been here, you know how the tea is here, and you've been there, so maybe you can give a comparison or like your personal experience.
I've also lived in the UK before, where they do have a kind of tea culture with like milk and sugar, and people love their tea in the UK. In the Netherlands, I wouldn't say there is a tea culture here. I think
Yet.
One can hope. I really hope you are going to change that. In the Netherlands, it feels like tea is for people who can't handle coffee that well, who think it's too much caffeine or maybe have a problem with their stomach. I think here also a lot of people are into herbal tea.
Kruiden tea,
But usually it's tea in tea bags in a cup, so not in a pot, not with the tea table set up. I learned Gong Fu Cha and I like sharing it with my friends here, and I asked them like, what do you think about it? And that's the kind of thing they say, that they're like, I've only ever had tea with a tea bag, so it's completely new to them. And
what they say, like, what is new for them? Why? What makes it so exciting? What makes it so interesting? You know, like for example, to compare when you drink tea from the tea bag, or if you drink tea in such a setting, like what would kind of their impression would be? You know, when you to show to a person who's know only how to drink tea from tea bag, and then you introduce him to a Gong Fu Cha style, for example. What they would say? You know, what would their reaction would be?
It's similar to what I discovered with sitting. It's like taking a moment, and then you take it together. And the Chinese tea ceremony can be very casual, very relaxed. Like it's not as formal as the Japanese tea ceremony. So people also really like that. They feel that they can relax and just enjoy it, and not feel that they are forced to behave a certain way. And so people enjoy that. That's also what I enjoyed the most in China, is that in almost any place you can just sit down and enjoy people with someone, and even if you don't share the language, you can still connect, and everyone feels at ease, even though you are a foreigner and they are Chinese.
Through the tea, right? It's like through drinking tea together.
And especially Chinese people, especially if they feel that you appreciate the culture and understand it, and it just makes them really happy. I told one friend about my revelation of the tea leaves in the Gaiwan, and she's from Inner Mongolia, so that's the complete other side of China. And she heard me and she gave me a hug, and she was like, you understand the soul of China. And she was like, I'm so happy for you that you discovered it.
How do you feel connected with the tea? Like, what's tea for you?
It's a whole world.
Like the moment that you said the tea is speaking to you, you know, like, because it's something special, you know, that process of connecting with something on a much deeper level. Like what you said, the opening of the universe.
But that's exactly what it is for me. It's a way to stay connected with the history and culture of China, to enjoy a moment with friends, to enjoy the aesthetics, because everything about it is beautiful. The taste, the table, all the utensils. It can get a very expensive hobby very fast. Buying all the teapots. yeah, you start to study artisans who make all these beautiful things by hand. You look at a very long history, like old manuscripts and emperors who have written poetry. So it connects so many aspects of culture and around something so enjoyable.
Exactly, yes.
So, I mean, it would be possible to study a culture through the wars that they have done, but this is so much nicer, right? It's and it's a living tradition. It's far from dead. It's that there is still development in ways that tea is produced and marketed and shared, and new people are discovering it. So yeah, it's an unbroken tradition of thousands of years. So I find that really fascinating, and I want to be part of that.
And I know that you learned as well the Kunming, right? Because you have your teachers from Eastern Leaf. How did you find it, like for yourself? Like how did it go, like to learn about the tea and the style, and what did you find most interesting or maybe the most difficult for yourself?
What I still find the most difficult is there are so many regions and so many different kinds of tea, so to really deeply get to know them all. But the good news is that the only way to learn it is to drink a lot of tea. So I'm really looking forward to that. My first tea teacher, Mabel, she was very much about theory. So every Sunday for 4 hours we would sit and drink tea and listen to her talk, and I got a lot of knowledge, but it was at the end I was like I'm still not entirely sure what to do at the Kunming tea table. So then I found my neighbor and I did classes with her, which was just we would take turns to serve the tea, and there was hardly any theory, which was nice. So it was kind of meditative, like we spent 2 hours together just drinking tea. I did an excursion to the tea regions as well, to Wuishan and Moghai, Mongla. So I saw a lot there as well. And then when I went back to Europe, I wanted to find a way to continue to study and also to formalize the studies. So I started to look for a teacher that would also give me a kind of accreditation. So I was like, I've spent so many months, years, hours studying. And then I found Eastern Leaves, and through them you can also get a Yunnan government accreditation as a tea taster. So that's what I'm aiming for. And at the end it doesn't matter much, but I think there are a lot of great tea experts out there who just learn by doing and drinking. But I like having a trajectory that gives me a kind of diploma at the end.
What find you the most fascinating, in all this, everything that's connected with tea culture, with tea, with anything around?
Oh, that's really hard to say.
Of something what is touching you, what makes it so special, or?
Well, often when I drink tea, I've had tea that was a little less than spectacular, and I could feel, I was like, oh, now you're turning into a tea snob. And then I had to think about the ladies who go into the field and pick, and the minority specialists who know how to process, who have all this knowledge and all the work that goes into it. So I was like, no, you have to respect every cup of tea. And I like it because every time I drink tea, I think of the people who are working on it in my province. And so that's, for me, that's the connection with Yunnan. So knowing that the people are there who are making it, and that I get to enjoy it.
I'm really curious, like what you see, how tea can really contribute to a person, like it can be like simple as it is, like just having simple setup, just drinking tea. And what you said, it's at the same time, it's also a connection with a very long history, like almost 4,000 years ago. People were drinking tea as a medicinal drink and still drinking it. So it's from one side it's very simple, but from other side it's also can be a part of a lifestyle. A part of someone is starting his day with a cup of tea, with tuning to himself, tuning to the daily chores that he or she needs to make. And then the tea is kind of a medium, which is guiding the day of the person, or while still being like something very small, it's not something like very imposant of and it's very interesting because it's becoming part of the life, so then an essential part. So in my view, tea is also a part, is a kind of a zeitgeist, zeitgeist. So it's a symbol for now, like in the time of Corona, when people are so disconnected. And the most thing which is really what I think we're missing is the connection, talking to someone. And at the same time, tea is as a medium to organize this, to have like a way to communicate with people while not making it so, it's just normal, drinking tea. So, what do you think about that? Like the tea is actually, now is the time for tea for becoming an important part for, I cannot say for everyone, but it's a way how we can harmonize our lives, to connect, to warm up, because tea is also very warming for when you're drinking it, you feel that warmth. So it kind of opens up, your heart, your senses, also sharpening your senses, but at the same time also calming, but still keep focusing, compared maybe to coffee, which makes you like very active. So like it's really fascinating, to see that tea is becoming slowly like a very, in my opinion, very trendy topic. Because now also the Michelin restaurants are choosing tea for their food, for example, a special tea for their food. So, so what do you think about that?
I think that there are a lot of, like, this whole new generation of kids, young people who are very concerned about the environment, about the way the world is headed. And they're very conscious of a lot of choices that they make. There are less people that start drinking alcohol. So I think for that whole generation it could also be really interesting to have a different kind of socializing.
Exactly, yes.
And and also enjoy the beauty. And for years there has already been a trend of people who appreciate artisanal products, like small batch coffees from different regions. And so I think tea also fits into that trend, where people who are looking for something special and that they want to learn about it and make it part of their identity. So I think it's definitely the right time to open a place like this, that people might find it, might also make this kind of discovery, like, oh, I'm gonna follow the way of tea. Even if people haven't been to China, I think a lot of people can enjoy the aesthetics and the tea ceremony.
It's also like for me, it's about developing your tastes, but taste not only because once you start to drink tea is white tea, green tea, red tea, oolongs, pu'ers, and they all have different aspects of taste and flavors, so then you kind of train yourself to recognize all these notes and smells and flavors, and then for me it becomes like a part of developing your taste. And it also goes about taste to life, you start to choose like the people that you want to communicate, you start to choose the situations or different aspects of life, also become more tasteful. So like coming from the topic of taste, like I was really curious about when you was traveling, did you have any like really special or circumstance of situations like during your long trip from the Netherlands to Japan, because I think you passed through many different cultures with different tastes. Was it something like special in your trip, during your trip?
Well, yeah, there were lots of special moments. A lot of people ask if it was dangerous or if I was scared, and it was quite the opposite. Like, people everywhere are incredibly nice and want to invite you into their home and for food or to stay. So overall, that was the biggest impression that the trip made, was that people everywhere are lovely and are very curious and want to connect. And also, as a cyclist, you are not so much an outsider, because a lot of people think you are poor because you are traveling by bicycle and you're tired and dirty, and they want to help you. Sometimes they ask me, like, why didn't you take a plane to Japan? It's like, well, the whole point is to experience it by bicycle. So I've had mostly good experiences, and to be honest, I wasn't looking forward to entering China, because I had been to China before, and it was a difficult country to travel in 2000, because there was no smartphone and people were a bit more weary of foreigners, and you could only stay in a few special hotels. So I was kind of bracing myself, like, oh, we're going to enter China and everything is going to be really hard. And then as soon as we crossed the border, people were so like, oh, hello, Lawai, Lawai. Yeah, to see the crazy development of the country. Like 20 years before, there were hardly any Chinese tourists, and now there are lots. And that means that there are also lots of really nice hotels and coffee places, a lot more beautiful tea shops also. I didn't see that many 22 years ago. So that was a huge nice surprise, and that also made me want to live there for a year. I was like, what's happening here? Like this crazy fast development, like I want to see what's happening here. Yeah, so that was a great discovery, but mostly it was just really many small encounters just with people everywhere. Yeah.
I know also that you have different cultural projects running with Dutch government, Dutch consulate, or any other organization. So, if there, what find you the most maybe interesting to see that cross-cultural communication between two different, European and Eastern cultures? Like, what did you find?
Yeah. I think in ways of communication and collaborating, China couldn't be more different from the Dutch style, which is very direct and confrontational even. And in Chinese culture, you will do anything you can to avoid confrontation. So it's been very interesting to live there and work and to make friends. And I actually did an intercultural training at work where I would explain myself, where I was like, I expect you to be very independent and to ask questions of me, and I'm not going to check your work. I'm going to expect you to do it on your own. And these can be the benefits. Like you gain independence, learning how to work with in an international environment. And I also said, like, I can be very direct. That doesn't mean I'm angry, and, or I can be critical, and that also doesn't mean that I'm trying to offend you, but it means that I want things to get better. It's like that's what Dutch people do.
And how was it perceived by?
By some people very well. With some people it was a bit of a challenge, but slowly I built my network and I worked well. I managed to do these things because I think the Chinese people and the Chinese audience that came to my events, they recognized that I really loved what I was doing, and also that I really loved and respected Yunnan and Chinese people. I think a lot of people come to China just with kind of dollar signs in their eyes. They're like, oh, it's a gigantic market and we're going to take it on. But in China, everything is about building relationships. and trust, and that takes time. But most of all, it takes respect. Like you cannot deny that Chinese people are interesting and intelligent, and you have to ask questions and be interested, and so that's how I managed to do it. And in a way I want to do the same thing the other way around. Like I want to share Chinese culture also in Europe through tea. So I'm continuing my studies, tea study, language study, and I hope to bring back a little bit of China to Europe. So I want to be a bridge between Europe and China, so both ways.
What's the project that you're doing now? What's the project like which are connecting the both cultures, like in terms of tea or like languages?
Right now nothing yet, because I arrived back a month ago.
Okay.
But that's also why I came here, because I was like, this is such an interesting place. Like I have no idea what or how, but some kind of collaboration would be nice. And in my new hometown, I'm just hosting a tea ceremony for my friends. But I would like to maybe make that also a more structural, formal thing, and to invite strangers also. So to do that maybe once a week. Maybe I understand that a lot of tea heads eventually also start trading tea, probably just because they have a lot and first they're giving it away and then they start selling. And I have to do research into how much there already is in Bulgaria, or how to connect with people who would be interested. So I'm just starting there, but I definitely want to do projects that are tea related as well.
Something
else? Just not about Andrea, but you're mostly living in Bulgaria actually. So you just but here for some period of time, after get back to Bulgaria and get back to China. So actually have a free bridges.
Yes.
It's because Bulgaria is something completely different. Also, great.
Well, Bulgaria for me is a bit the Yunnan of Europe. Yes, it's this southern corner, and there are also like these trade routes between east and west. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. It was also part of the Soviet Empire. So it also feels like a very diverse region, and it's also like Yunnan. It's a bit more laid back, a little bit less developed, and mountains, and that's why I picked it. I was like, I love the Netherlands, but I can't live here anymore. It's too neat. There are no mountains.
Also, I know that the cultural events, maybe you can tell something more about that you were organizing in Kunming. You were running also a platform or contributing to a platform about the cultural life in Kunming. So maybe you can tell something about that.
So for a little bit more than 2 years, I worked for this international media marketing agency. And I was the editor of international website. So local foreigners would use that, and tourists or people who are interested in doing business in China. After that, I went freelance. So I started my company Wenlan, and I was doing editing work. So editing English text for Chinese clients mostly. And then I made a proposal for the Dutch consulate that I wanted to do showcase Dutch art and culture in Yunnan. So I started with film screenings, then I did artist talk, so I get one artist to come and do a talk at 3 places, so Kunming, Dali, Suzhou. And I did 2 big events that are called PechaKucha. I had 7 speakers, and every speaker has 20 slides that they present, and for every slide they have 20 seconds. So they're very short presentations. And the first one was all fashion designers, and the second one was all architects. And I did both in Dali, where you have a very interesting audience, because a lot of people come from the big cities in China to live in Dali, to look for a different kind of lifestyle outside of the pressure of Chinese society. So there were a lot of designers, musicians, artists.
There were various public.
Yeah, but very interested in culture, and I would get speakers from Beijing, Shanghai, and like really big names. So they were very happy that like these famous architectural companies would come to a small place like Dali, and especially after the event, people would stay for hours to talk to each other, and so it was also creating a space for dialogue, which can be difficult in China. So I'm very happy I could do that. That was kind of my dream. Like I want people to talk and share, and and then also of course maybe collaborations come of that, maybe projects or business, and so to make longer lasting connections.
Thank you very much for coming here, and I really see and hope that we're going to continue our communication, our connection, because I think it's very essential to spread that tea news and tea culture and tea vibes throughout the Europe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.